understood that it's something serious.
The driver of the truck was finally shot and killed by police. He's thought to be a 31-year-old French-Tunisian. People fled in panic as the lorry drove along the city's promenade. The French president says the country faces a long struggle ahead.
We have an enemy who will continue to hate all the peoples, all the countries who put liberty as the essential value.
As the government here declares 3 days of national mourning, a service is held at Nice Cathedral to pay tribute to the victims. A very good evening. Welcome to Nice. Well, it is happening with alarming regularity, but this time not with automatic weapons, not with a suicide vest, but with a truck. Terrifyingly simple, but just as effective and just as deadly. And today, throughout the course of the day, in the hot sun, down here on the Promenade des Anglais, the police have been working on a crime scene that stretches well over a mile. The truck, driven by 31-year-old French-Tunisian Mohamed Boulil, zigzagged at speed down the promenade, mowing down families and people who were running for their lives without even a shred of mercy. There were 84 people that were killed, including 10 children, and there are 52 people who tonight remain in a critical condition in hospital. Well, let's remind you of the events last night. The attack happened at around 11 o'clock Nice time, just after a firework display here on the seafront on the Promenade des Anglais. The road had been partially closed. It was a big family occasion. Eyewitnesses say the truck hit several people near the Hotel Negresco, a well-known local landmark here in Nice. In fact, the hotel's lobby was being used as a clearing station to treat the wounded and to offer emergency medical help. The lorry then continued along the promenade until it had almost reached the Palais de la Méditerranée. Police say there was an exchange of gunfire there, which resulted in the driver being shot dead. Well, President Hollande has said that there is a long road ahead of France at the moment. He's called it a terrorist attack, although we need to wait and see. There is no direct link at the moment to any terrorist group. François Molland, the prosecutor who is investigating, says they are looking into the background of the driver. But there has been a national state of emergency in place, and that will now be extended for another 3 months. Our correspondent Lucy Williamson has all the details of this terrible evening, and just a warning, there are images in her report that you might find distressing.
They dared to celebrate freedom and paid with fear. Beach lovers, party-goers, children, hunted with the most mundane of weapons, a lorry. It arrived as the fireworks were ending, crawling onto the promenade before picking up speed and heading straight for the crowd. Its first appearance caught on camera by this man.
Up until this very moment here, the truck actually didn't run over anybody. Yet there was a motorcyclist trying to approach the truck, trying to open the door while driving. He failed and he fell off the motorcycle. And then there were two police officers standing right here at that very corner, and they fired 2 gunshots at the driver of that truck. So up until then, or from that moment on, the rampage took place. Like the vehicle accelerated and ran just in a very odd way right in the middle of the crowd.
It zigzagged for more than a mile through the street party as people ran. Bodies were falling like skittles, one witness said. Another saw parents throwing their children over fences to try and keep them safe.
The police surrounded the car and they kept shooting him until they are sure he's dead. I saw him dead already. I saw his head outside the window of the truck. And again, the French police officer, when he saw me standing up and filming, he came to me aggressively and yelled at me to get down, get down. All the people on the beach to run, because I think they thought maybe there is a bomb in the car or something, or other people hiding inside the truck itself from behind. So at that moment, I realized that this is really something wrong, and I started to run with the people.
Un pistolet automatique de calibre 7,65 mm.
Police found an automatic pistol, bullets, a second automatic pistol which was fake, 2 replica assault rifles, an empty grenade, as well as a driver's license and a bank card in the lorry.
French officials say the driver was a local man, a 31-year-old French Tunisian known to police for petty crimes. Today, the only figures on Nice's empty seafront were forensics teams, picking their way through the debris of grief. France was just beginning to feel safe again after the attacks here last year. Safe enough even to come out and celebrate being French. But as people ran screaming down this street last night, the sound of gunfire mimicking fireworks, that moment of national pride and national unity became once again an individual race to survive. Imad said he froze when he saw the lorry, then ran towards the beach. Above the screams, he heard the lorry's engine just behind him. His path ahead blocked by a bench.
And then when I jumped over the bench, I found myself that I jumped on a woman. She was laying on the ground too. So I just closed my eyes and waited for the crash, neither to crash me or neither to survive. I was feeling that I'm gonna die. I was feeling really, really scared. I didn't know what to do, but I just gave up on that moment. Till I saw the bench breaking up. It was too loud and too scary. So I looked at it and I found it destroyed. So it was really, really close. The thing that was between me and the truck, it was a bench, a small bench.
The French president arriving in Nice today described the attack as a monstrosity. Of the 200 people injured, he said 50 were hovering between life and death.
We are facing a long battle because we have an enemy who will continue to hate all the peoples, all the countries who enjoy liberty, who put liberty as the essential value.
The flowers blooming on the barricades today mark a particular kind of pain. The slow, mocking torture of French values. Attacks that highlight the price of freedom, the failure of fraternity, and that brutal equaliser, death. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Nice.
I think the most shocking thing about what happened last night is this relentless procession of the truck down the road. It just kept going and lumbering on at 40 to 50 miles an hour, mowing down people who were in its way, and there was nothing seemingly to stop it. Only the actions, in fact, of 3 very brave police women and men who were on the promenade, who first exchanged gunfire about 300 metres from where the lorry stopped, and then again, eventually killing the driver, brought it to a halt. But as we say, by that time, 84 people had been killed. Well, John Donnison has more details on the driver and that truck that came down the promenade.
It was supposed to be a night of celebration. It ended in confusion, chaos and carnage. The attack started around 11 o'clock local time as thousands of families strolled home after a night of fireworks. The lorry was heading east along the Promenade des Anglais and picked up speed on a rampage that was to last for more than a mile. Within minutes, the first casualties were reported. The driver began to swerve from side to side, trying to kill as many people as possible. He then careered into the pedestrian area. Armed police opened fire, but couldn't stop him as he continued to plough through the crowd. Eyewitnesses say he was travelling at around 50 miles an hour.
This is as close as we can now get to the route the attacker took. You can see the Promenade des Anglais just behind the famous Hotel Negresco. at the bottom of the street. By this point, several minutes into the attack, he'd already killed dozens of people, and it was to be 300 or 400 more meters that way before he was finally stopped as people fled for their lives.
Finally, further down the promenade, using heavy fire, police managed to stop the lorry and kill the driver as people fled in panic. Matthew Schooler from Kingston upon Thames had been on what was meant to be a dream holiday with his girlfriend. Today, he knows they're lucky to be alive.
There was a lady in front of us on a scooter with her kids and she fell over. She wasn't trampled, but people running over her. The kids were upset. People were picking up kids and running, and the kids were crying, as you can imagine. People didn't really know what was going on.
This was not a high-tech attack, but the brutality and the banality of the method make it all the more terrifying. A vehicle used as a weapon of war. John Donnison, BBC News in Nice.
Yeah, a very difficult thing to come to terms with for those who were here last night. I don't know if you've ever been to a Bastille Day celebration, but they're very colourful, they're very loud, and they can be, at night, very confusing as well. And there must have been immense confusion on the promenade last night. Let's speak to two people who were here, Simon Coates and his wife, Amanda. Simon, I'm going to talk to you because I think it's been such a difficult day, I know, for Amanda, and not surprising, really. Tell me where you were and what you saw.
Well, we just left the Bastille Day fireworks and we were both cycling home along the cycle track up the promenade. We got separated in the crowds, and as I was halfway home, about a kilometre from here, I saw that there was a white van veering down the promenade, actually on the pedestrian section. And at first I thought it was out of control. But then I heard the screams and I realised that it was aiming at people, and it wasn't veering out of control. The driver was directing it at people. When within a few seconds it was almost upon me, I looked to my left and there was an older man, perhaps a grandfather, a father and a young boy about 10, and the truck aimed straight for them. I dived slightly to my right. The little boy leapt, I don't know how, but he managed to get away from the truck by inches, but the truck aimed at him. I then realised that this guy was heading straight towards where I expected my wife would be coming. So I turned round and I followed the truck. It was a wake of devastation. There were just body after body. I must have checked about 4 dozen, maybe even 5 dozen people to see if it was my wife.
So you'd lost your wife and you didn't know if she was one of these people?
Exactly. I didn't know if she'd been hit. I didn't know how far behind she was.
The people on the ground from one to the other?
Cycling past, trying to identify whether one was my wife. Some of these people had been hit head-on. A lot of them had been dragged under the lorry and were not recognisable. So I was looking to see if I could find her bike, or if I could recognise any item of clothing or shoes. I didn't see anybody that I recognised, but I wasn't completely reassured. So I followed the white van until it came to a stop behind us by the Negresco Hotel, perhaps 40 yards beyond that. I got to within about 20 yards and I saw that a policeman was standing there pointing his gun into the passenger window. And I realised that there were no further bodies, so that there was no more to check beyond that. And the police were screaming to get away. They thought there was a bomb. So I turned around as quickly as I could. The ground was very slippery with what was left of some people, and I almost fell over. But I managed to turn around and head back up the promenade, and I saw some dreadful things. It was like a chamber of horrors. Every person seemed to have died in an increasingly grotesque way.
And all that horror mixed with the terror that Amanda had been caught up in it.
Yes, I didn't know if she was alive or dead. I tried ringing her, but her phone wasn't switched on. It had lost charge. So it took about 20 minutes before we were able to get to each other, and that was the longest 20 minutes of my life.
And Amanda, of course, I know you don't want to speak, but you'd had to cycle past it as well. Is it your firm belief that those brave policemen, and I spoke about them a little earlier, 3 policemen, if if they hadn't have jumped in.
If they hadn't done what they'd done. When I arrived, I could see that there was an almost open road before this man. The reason he'd come off the promenade was that there's a gazebo that stopped his progress, so he just veered off there onto the road. If he hadn't been stopped, he would have been into the major crowds. There were dribs and drabs. He killed 84 people, but they were in dribs and drabs. If he'd have got into the tens of thousands, hundreds of people could have died. So were it not for them, I think this could have been a major... it could be... But it's bad enough now, but it could have been incalculably worse.
There was a policewoman that jumped onto the cab.
I don't know.
I've heard a report to that. It's unconfirmed, but I hear a policewoman was involved. How do you come to terms with that?
Well, for me, the important thing is my wife is safe, so that's a big part of it. We're left wondering how you can call yourself a human being, how you can say you follow a God or God and then do something like this. The three don't match up, because what was done here was families were aimed at repeatedly, children. I saw one lady whose little boy had died, had obviously been hit, and she was just lying next to him talking in his ear very calmly. But I saw other people who were hysterical, and these were families that were broken apart in a split second.
No mercy from the
No
driver.
mercy at all. He veered left and right to hit as many people as he could. When I was coming back, I saw lots of plastic shards, long pieces of plastic, and I couldn't work out what they were. And then I realised that these were the seafront benches that people had been hiding behind, and he just mown them down. It was just horrific.
And on that journey home, I've spoken to other eyewitnesses today. They went into the back streets, and then people started running the other way. So there was a feeling maybe another attack was underway.
There was a lot of rumour, and a rumour spread very quickly that there was a bomb somewhere behind us towards the old quarter. I don't know anything about that. I only saw what was on the promenade. And
when you walked through the door and you saw Amanda?
It was the best feeling in the world. She had also been worried about me, so she didn't know if I was one of the people lying on the promenade, and I didn't know if she was one. So it was just wonderful, and we're very grateful to be together, and I think that helps a lot, because the things that were done here were inhuman.
You here on holiday?
Yes, we are.
So you're passionate about France?
We do like France, yeah, we come every year.
It's more heartbreaking, isn't it, when you think about the country and what it's going through?
It is. We have friends here, we've been coming here many years, so we know the local shopkeeper, we know the concierge, and they're all devastated about this. Everybody knows somebody who is involved, whether they're in the emergency services or whether their child is missing. One of the ladies in the apartment block we're staying in has a young child in the hospital, the children's hospital, the Lonval. So everybody's been affected by this. And as you will see behind over here, all the beaches are closed, as a mark of respect for the people that died.
These people are just walking around in a daze today.
Yeah.
A lot of them were here last night as well.
That's right. Certainly I think I was one of the very few people who was travelling up and down in the immediate aftermath, but gradually people just began to appear to try and help, do what they could for people. I was obviously desperately trying to find my wife. By the time I'd found her, the promenade was being closed off and the emergency services were starting to arrive. But there were some very brave people who tried to do what they could but I have to say that most of the people who were injured were beyond help. I think a very high proportion of those people who were hit were killed outright.
If you don't mind me saying, you both seem still in a certain amount of shock. Is there somewhere you can go and people you can talk to? Do you have family
Well,
here?
we've been speaking to our family very regularly throughout the day, and we obviously have each other, so that's been a big help. It's a shared experience, so it makes things better.
I'm really grateful for you coming to talk to us. I know it's upsetting. I hope you take great care of yourselves. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks. That's Simon Coates and his wife Amanda. Gosh, extraordinary, isn't it? Some of the eyewitness accounts. Well, let's talk about the attacks that have been here in France, because of course there have been 3 in the course of 18 months. How does France cope with the enormity of all that? Our security correspondent Frank Gardner has been looking back at the recent history of terror attacks here in France.
Against a perfect Riviera backdrop, the grisly investigation has begun. French crime scene officers have been piecing together the final moments of last night's attack. And what of the perpetrator, named as Tunisian-born Mohamed Bouhalal? He's believed to have lived in this apartment building in Nice. His neighbors describe his behavior as odd.
He looked at us weirdly. If we arrived at the building behind him, he would slam the door in our faces. Frankly, not normal.
Police investigators have seized anything that could throw a light on why Bouhalal committed such an abominable act.
Mohamed Laoueche Boulel était connu des services de police et de justice.
He was known by the police for violence and petty theft between 2010 and 2016. He was convicted in March and sentenced by the court to 6 months in prison. But there's nothing to suggest any sign of radicalization.
Only yesterday, during the Bastille Day parade, it was expected that France's state of emergency would be ended. Now it's been extended and 10,000 troops have been mobilized. France is clearly a top target for so-called Islamic State, or IS.
It has the largest number of foreign fighters in the West, in Syria and Iraq, and also the leadership of Islamic State now includes 2 Frenchmen who have nothing else as a desire than to hit France.
The call to use lorries like this as a weapon against pedestrians was made by IS 2 years ago. Since then, it's established a network of supporters in every major European country. Both MI5, the security service here, and the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command are working closely with the French authorities on this investigation. They're looking to see if there's any information that could link the attacker in Nice with anybody back here. The government is also reviewing its safety procedures to reduce the chances of a similar attack succeeding here in Britain. Tonight, the instrument of so many people's death and injury has been towed away. But the question remains, can France's next terrorist attack be stopped? Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Well, all this is happening in the context of a presidential election, which is just around the corner. A lot of soul-searching in France. French President François Hollande has been here today. The country was already under a state of security. Nonetheless, he's upping the ante a little bit. He's putting another 10,000 army reservists onto the streets, not just in Nice, of course, but in other cities around France. They're tightening the borders, and they're looking again at their security and their intelligence procedures to see whether there's anything that they could have missed here. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Jacques Reylan is a specialist in French politics and security policy at the Global Policy Institute, and he's joining us by Skype from Saint-Malo. Mr. Reylan, very good of you to join us this evening. Let's talk first about the politics, because it is important. Some of the things we've heard from François Hollande today will obviously have been said with one eye on what is going to be happening next year and the threat that he faces politically from Marine Le Pen and the Front National.
Yes, indeed. And this time, unlike in the other 2 big events, such as the Bataclan killings on the 30th of November and the Charlie Hebdo killing, this time there was no national political unity. From early on this morning, spokesmen for the right started attacking the president, saying and basing also their attacks on a report which was released last week, saying there were some intelligence failures. What they failed to see is that actually intelligence failures resulted in great part on the reorganization of the intelligence services in France under Nicolas Sarkozy and the dismantle of what was known as the Renseignements Généraux. And this time you can feel that there is a political dimension. The presidential election is next year, and all the leaders of the right have been very critical of Hollande. The first of them being the ex-mayor of Nice, Christian Estrosi, who accused, who said the state was responsible. And even though this type of attack and the profile of the attacker makes him absolutely unsuspectable. It's someone who used to drink, who used to go out, who never went to the
Mr. Relin,
this time, unfortunately...
Mr. Relin, I'll have to interrupt you. I'm very sorry, but we are out of time, and we'll hope to talk to you some more. You are watching BBC News.